Hey folks, Jeff Gonzalez here with the Bulletproof Workshop podcast, powered by AR15.com. We've got a special SHOT Show special with my good friend Alex Bosco. Alex, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, brother, man.
So a lot of folks may not know kind of like who you really are, so let's start with that.
So within the industry,
Yes.
Other than being a father of two and husband and all of those things, which are far more important than what I'm about to tell you, I am also the inventor of the stabilizing brace and founder now of SB Tactical, which is located in Florida.
Well, seems as though this is kind of like an interesting time with the most recent rulings. But before we get into that, I want to kind of talk a little bit about like why did you first kind of move down the road of inventing, creating the brace? What led that?
Yeah, I guess that's the best question to start off with. So I had gotten out of active duty. I was overseas for many years. Came back to Florida where I had family members. I had two small kids. I had a 6-month-old and a 2.5-year-old. And like many other former military folks, we were trying to find a job. What am I going to do? You know, my wife was a foreign national at the time, so it was like she didn't even have her green card. Like, I wanted to be a police officer, like a lot of other folks.
Sure.
And in my interim time, I would go to the range, like many other Marines and former service members. We enjoyed shooting. And at the range, in the group of guys that I would always go with, there was a guy who had lost an arm in Afghanistan. And he was firing a AR-15 pistol. Now, I was not familiar with AR-15 pistols at the time.
No way.
Because like most of us, were like, we never had that.
Yeah,
why would you do that?
Yeah.
At any rate, so he's shooting this firearm, and we've all seen the ROs that are just a little bit over-eager. And so the over-eager RO comes over to my buddy, and he's like, whacking away with this AR pistol. He's like, oh, you can't shoot that standing up. You got to bench the gun. And I'm like, what? So the impetus, I guess, of all of this originated from some anger, because here's this RO coming over to this veteran saying, hey, you got to bench that gun, and it kind of pissed me off. So that night I went home. I had a camera case, and there's the foam inside the camera case, and I pulled the foam out of the camera case, cut the foam out, and fashioned it in the form of what kind of looked like the brace today, and I cut it down the middle, and I essentially took 100-mile-an-hour tape and just taped it to the back of this gun that the guy had. And so we go back there the next day trying to goad this RO into like saying something again, and he has this thing strapped to his arm, and the RO was like, no, actually that's a good idea. So I was like, wow, okay. What he did say, though, was, hey, you might want to talk to ATF about that, and he started explaining why, and I was like, oh, I didn't know anything about that. So I went home. I did some research, and I found out about AR pistols and all of those platforms.
And about what time frame was this? Do you have any
This
idea?
was probably somewhere around, it was probably May of 2012.
Wow, okay.
So, and it's funny, a little insight. Today is the 10-year anniversary of me coming to SHOT Show to pitch
No way.
to Shark Tank the brace.
You're kidding.
Today.
You're kidding.
Today. So,
this is so awesome.
I know, so it's crazy. So at any rate, so I come up with this idea. I go home. I'm talking to my wife about, hey, she's saying, well, you might, if it's something new, you might want to look at patenting it. And I called a patent attorney, and he's like, well, if you want to come to the office, you have to give us a check for $450 for an hour of our time. And I didn't have any of that. Like I literally, it was like I said, 2 small kids, a wife, looking for a job. At any rate, I try to research it a little bit more, and eventually, like, my wife's just give the guy $450, go there. Those attorneys, in fact, are still our attorneys today, the IP attorneys. And the IP attorneys had to do something called this prior art study. So they had to see if anybody had ever come up with an arm brace before.
Interesting.
And so they did this prior art study, and it comes out. They're like, look, we don't see anything that resembles what you're trying to do.
Wow.
So I spent some time writing. It took me about a month to draft a letter to the ATF telling them what I wanted to do and the reasons that I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And this was back at a time where I called the ATF. It was Firearms Technology Branch.
Yes,
at
I
the
remember
time.
that.
Yes, but it wasn't Fat D. Now it's Fat D. Back then it was another kind of terminology.
Yeah.
At any rate, I called them up, talked to this guy. He's like, listen, write me a letter. If you can, send me some kind of prototype, or imagery first, but prototype. So I write a letter. I started making them in my garage. I bought a kit from like Hobby Lobby or something. It was like a rubber making kit, and I basically made this thing. It looked like pancake mix. You could find it online. I think so. On AR15.com was where I had originally put this thing, and everybody's like, "What, did you make that out of pancake mix?" So I send this thing to ATF on November 17th. I send it to ATF, and on November 27th. So 10 days later,
holy cow,
I got a response from ATF saying, and it's the letter that's published saying, yeah, you can do this, and it's perfectly legal to do it, and here's why. And I knew I was onto something.
Yeah.
I knew I was onto something.
Hell yeah.
And the first thing I did was I went and I published this thing on AR15.com, and I had a website where people could send me, if they wanted to buy one, they could send me an email. Well, it was GoDaddy. So I set it up on GoDaddy, and it was like the next day it crashed. And GoDaddy calls me up saying, hey, you have somebody spamming your account. Well, it turns out it wasn't people spam. It was people sending me emails wanting this product. So I was like, holy cow, we really are onto something. So I basically, like, this was around December timeframe. I had to beg, borrow, and steal to get to SHOT Show. So I go to SHOT Show with this other guy who I'd met, Grant Shaw. Who
love Grant.
Yeah, so Grant.
Love you, Grant.
Yeah, so Grant and I go to SHOT Show, and we're Shark Tanking this thing. So at this point, though, a lot of people had heard about this guy who invented this product.
Yeah.
And they're like, this
it's like
is
about 3 months have passed then, right? Well, 2 months.
Yeah, something like that.
2 months,
but it was quick.
Yeah,
it was quick. So we're going around, and I had spoken to Remington and all these people. And a lot of people really wanted this product.
Yeah.
And I will say that I got my doors slammed in my face. It's a gimmick. It's BS. Blah blah blah.
Really?
Get out of here. Oh yeah.
You're kidding.
Oh yeah. People that later on, years later, said I was so wrong and I'm sorry. Well, now it's 10 years later, and now we can have another conversation that will lead to where we are today. But at any rate, at the time, I had everybody saying they wanted to buy the product, and I had met Jeff Creamer at Sig Sauer.
Love Jeff.
So Jeff was head of what was he doing at Sig? He was doing product development at Sig. And I go up to him, and I'm with Grant, and we show him these prototypes that we come up with. And he had seen it already on AR15.com. He was like, wait right here. It's a moment that is ingrained in my brain because it was the beginning of all of it.
Yeah.
And Sig Sauer was the one who originally said, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to try this. And I needed somebody big to do it. I needed somebody that would give legitimacy to this product. And we had Sig Sauer and we had Century Arms were the two companies that we're doing this with. And from there, it just spun out of control within 6 months. So 3 months later, we came out with the product. Within 6 months, we had sold over 250,000 units.
6 months?
In 6 months.
250,000 units.
I mean, it's crazy. It's not something that happens. A lot of people come to me and say, hey, you're the inventor. Like, what does it mean? And I always, the caveat I give them is that what happened to me is
very
singular.
Unique.
It's unique.
Yeah, very unique.
I was lucky.
Yeah.
I really was fortunate.
I have a question. So you said you got a letter back from the ATF that said this is why it's legal. What were some of the points that they made that said that this is why it was legal?
Well, that's an interesting question because over the years, that format has changed.
Exactly.
So the original ATF letter that I got was really 1 page long. I mean, it was a page, and it was like the signature page was just the next page. So it was 1 page letter.
Oh my God!
This is
one page, folks.
1 page. Now, so contrast that to yesterday, 2 days ago, 293 pages of can I say mental masturbation? Of mental masturbation that goes, it's just crazy. So a 1-pager that said, hey, yes, you can do this. It is essentially what I told them was, and what it still is today, is it's an orthotic device that allows people with limited mobility to fire a pistol format that's frankly obscene. I mean, you and I look at an AR-15 pistol and we're like, that's not a pistol, but it is.
Yeah.
Okay, according to the Gun Control Act, the way pistols are defined, an AR-15 pistol and all of those types of pistols are pistols.
Yeah.
My product allows people to actually fire the pistol the way it is defined.
Yeah.
That is to fire a pistol with one hand.
And the key thing about that, and you said this early on, is that it stabilizes the platform so that the shooter or the end user can control it.
So essentially, that's what it does, and you get a lot of people that say, "Oh, well, you're going to strap this gun to your forearm. It's not like how are you going to defend yourself with that?" And
That's
not the point.
That wasn't what it was designed for.
No, it's an orthotic device that allows people to enjoy the sport. Okay, and it doesn't have to be somebody who came back from Afghanistan.
No, of course
although it
not.
does help people like that. I've had letters from people who have like an ALS or some kind of
absolutely.
like brain degenerative disorders, and they're all using it that way. And it's interesting to see it. And over the years, various different types of these orthotic devices have come out.
Yeah.
So
let's flash forward to, well, maybe let's not flash forward to the most recent. There have been a series of, what should we call them, amendments to that first letter?
Yeah, that's. I think that's the way to go. So, and what that shows is it shows how ATF has been, and you and I talked about this earlier. So Jim Jordan has been championing this whole
For sure.
like idea that you have executive agencies that are politicized and weaponized. Well, by explaining the process of what's happened over the years, there is no other way to look at a politicized ATF. So this is how it went.
Yes.
2012, I come up with the product. Okay, the product is approved.
Right.
This is under Obama that it was approved. Okay. Obama at that time did not have a ATF appointee, presidential appointee. Towards the end of his presidency, he appoints B. Todd Jones. Okay.
Yeah.
B. Todd Jones is appointed in 2015, I think, the beginning of it, end of 14. By 15, we get our first, let's call it reversal, whereby the ATF comes out and says use determines the legality of the product. And by that I mean, if you take the product, what they were saying was, the product is legal. You can buy it, you can own it, you can sell it, you can fire it the way Bosco has told you. You can, it was intended to be fired.
Yeah.
But the minute you put it up to your shoulder, you've redesigned it.
Shazam!
Boom! Yeah, like something out of Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Right? So it's now redesigned, and it is now a short-barreled rifle. That was the first time they went against the original ruling. Now this was, remember, most people might remember this. I don't even remember. Between that time and the time that I started it, a police officer out of Colorado also asked the ATF, what are we to do about this? And the ATF responded to this officer saying, listen, the ATF cannot tell people how to use a product. We've approved the product. The product is intended for a certain thing.
Yes.
And this letter went viral.
Yeah.
So we started selling the bejesus out of this product because, oh, look, the ATF is saying we can't tell you how to use it. Well, 5 months after that, 6 months after that, whap.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's 2015. So for 2 years almost, I went to Capitol Hill. I was there every other week talking to senators,
I actually remember that.
congressmen. I was trying to get people to say, look, you can't have the ATF tell people how they can and can't use their illegally purchased product.
Right.
Well, something strange happened at the end of 16, beginning of 17, and that's called Trump. Okay, so B. Todd Jones was out of a job.
Yep.
ATF had no leader.
I remember that too.
And Trump was now president, and so the ATF, they're like smelling the political winds. So now the winds are changing.
Yeah.
And Tom Brandon, who was the interim director at the time, said, "Yeah, this is nonsense.
Yes.
So let's get rid of it. You can use this thing how you want."
Yes.
And they got rid of it. So they went from approving it to disapproving it back to approving it. Okay. So
that's a lot of wavering.
Right. That's a lot. So that's 2017. So then towards the middle to the end of Trump's presidency, the winds started changing again. And the people at ATF, I'm not going to call them out by name, but we know for a fact that they are politicized because of how they invest their private funds towards certain...
What?
We know this.
You're saying
Yeah.
impropriety is taking place inside of the ATF?
Not directly through them, but through their spouses.
Right, of course.
So, but this is public knowledge. People know this.
Yeah.
So the ATF started saying, no, people are starting to use this thing the wrong way, and we don't want these types of weapons to be sold on the streets.
Yeah.
So essentially, the ATF, by saying that, is they're becoming politicized and saying we're trying to chill the sale of certain types of firearms. That's wrong. That's not up to the ATF.
Right.
That's up to Congress.
Exactly.
Okay. So right before COVID, they tried to come out with this. They went to Q. I don't know if you remember. Kevin Prittingham's Honey Badger.
Yeah.
And they were saying, no, that thing is it's a short-barreled rifle, and they were going to kind of they were going to make them all illegal.
Yeah.
And so many people wrote in
Yes.
that I think at the time it was Bill Barr, because I had spoken to Bill Barr's number 2 guy, I forget who it was, and they were like, yeah, you guys can't do this. And it died down again.
Huh.
Okay.
When you say died down, do you mean like the ATF reversed its ruling, or they just didn't bother to come through with
Yeah,
it?
they didn't reverse anything. They just said, okay, well, we're not going to do this now.
There was that
Not going to
indecision.
do this. Yeah, we're not going to do this now.
Yes.
But they knew that there was an election coming.
For
okay?
sure.
And when Biden, got elected, the first thing he did was he sent his transition team. This is in December before he's president. He sent his transition team to ATF headquarters and spoke to Regina Lombardo, who's the interim ATF agent or ATF in charge. And they basically said, hey, what do we need to do for gun control?
Yeah.
And Regina told them, listen, the 2 things that you should probably be looking at are 80% lowers, ghost guns, and braces.
Yeah.
And those were the 2 things that they went after. And the only reason they really went after that was because Regina said, hey, those are the things you should probably go after.
Do you think she said that because those were low-lying fruit that seemed easy for an administration just coming in to try to like rattle the saber a little bit and like say, hey, we're coming after your guns?
I think that's exactly the reason she said it. The problem is I don't think she understood
Wow.
like how many braces have been sold since then. So Congressional Research Services, which is the group that does the studies for Congress before they come up with laws, those are the ones that said there are anywhere between 10 and 40 million braces in people's hands.
Huh.
So what I think that means for Congress now, considering that they have this kind of Congressional Research Services study, it really means that these people need to kind of start looking at a way to dial this back. Now,
For sure.
I don't know if that's going to happen. I know that the congressmen that I'm talking to really want to work on that. I think they're taking a different direction, and they're more looking at trying to either subpoena these people and bring them to Congress and ask them, hey, what are you guys doing? But yeah.
Well, my question was going to be, okay, so now we're pretty much present day with this most recent ruling, which, and again, 300, let's just say more than 1 page. How is that? How are we interpreting that as the general public?
So, I mean, we've had this ruling presented to us, 3-4 days ago now? Friday.
Yeah.
I've read it 3 or 4 times now, 293 pages.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to look at that document and not come away with anything that's dispositive. In other words, in the previous presentation of this, when they had this whole point system, which they don't have now, they gave you, for example, a weapon that was okay to purchase.
Yes.
And it was with one of our products, which is called the SB Mini.
Yeah.
So in this version, there is nothing that is dispositive. In other words, everything, according to them, is going to be a stock. And they're saying that by changing the definition of rifle, which was defined in the Gun Control Act, and in there's 2 different versions of it. There's one under the National Firearms Act, and then there's one under the Gun Control Act. What they want to do is they want to take the definition of that, and to that definition they want to add braces to the definition of rifle. The minute you've done that, anything that has a brace on it is now a stock.
Yeah.
And so it just, that's it. That's the end.
Yeah.
That's the end of all of them.
So that's where so theoretically, that seems like that's their game plan.
I mean, their game plan it's really kind of sneaky. I like talking to people, and I'm telling you exactly what I know, and I say what I mean. And the ATF is not like that. What the ATF wants to do as a government agency is they want to keep things broad. So if
they have wiggle room.
They have wiggle room to go after whoever they
Exactly.
want. So in the 293 pages, they're telling people, listen, the product is legal, and if you bought one of the braces and you're using it as it's intended, then you're fine.
Yeah.
But how do you say that and then not give any kind of example of when it would be legal to own? Because essentially what they're saying is they're giving you all of these kind of criteria, and they're saying that they are, they're being precise on the criteria, but they're not, because they're saying it's about surface area. Okay, well, what's the surface area?
Yes.
They don't want to tell you that.
Yes.
It's about length of pull. Okay, what's the length of pull? They don't want to tell you that.
None of that information is. So here's my other very, and I try to leave emotion out of this. In 290 plus pages, there is nothing that is definitive about what is and what isn't per se. Like, I feel like there's so much ambiguity in that report or that ruling that it's exactly what in their intention was to confuse everybody to the nth degree, so that now you want to err on the side of caution.
Well,
They create so much confusion and so much doubt. Oh, well, the last thing I want is to become a felon.
yeah, the word you're using, though, ambiguous, is a word that's used in the case law. And the case law I'm talking about is the last bump stock case that came out that's called Cargill.
Yeah.
So the reason that term is used is because if a statute is ambiguous and proven to be ambiguous, the state, the government, the federal government in this case, needs to use something called the rule of lenity. And so if something can be proven ambiguous and the rule of lenity applies, then you can't use criminal statutes to put people in prison anymore because the government has to be lenient about it.
Nice.
And so that's why Cargill won in the Fifth Circuit, because essentially the judges were like, look, it's ambiguous. You guys are saying, you said it wasn't a machine gun for 10 years. Okay, now you're saying it is a machine gun.
Yes.
Okay, how are people to know what it is or isn't? I know what you're saying now, but how is it that you're not going to change it later? So the ambiguity question is a really important question when it comes to moving forward with case law and taking them to court.
Nice.
They will say that they are not ambiguous. What they said in the 293 pages was that they made a mistake and they didn't consider certain things. Okay, but how are they going to defend themselves against ambiguity? Because if we've gone back and forth four times, and you have a 293-page document that's trying to explain something to you, and even reading the 293 pages, it's not clear.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to claim that it's unambiguous.
All right.
It is ambiguous in my opinion.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, to go from one page to 290 plus pages, when the one page was so clear and concise, and this is not, is frustrating. But let's talk about what's on the horizon. What are you championing for now? Like, I know you're in touch with a lot of politicians. I know you're in touch with a lot of people that want to kind of write this, but what's really going to happen? What's happening now?
Well, I can tell you what we're doing.
Yes.
And I can tell you about some of the things that make me mad. I think what I started about a year and a half ago is we started this nonprofit. It's called FRAC. It's a Firearm Regulatory Accountability Coalition. Okay. And what FRAC wants to do is they want to keep ATF accountable for what they do. Now you'd say, well, who else is out there? There's FPC, okay, mm-hmm. There's GOA, there's NAGR, we're here at SHOT Show right now, there's NSSF. Yeah. Okay, so FRAC is going to be an industry group, okay, just like NSSF. FPC and those guys and NRA, they're end users. They're like, for everybody else. Mm-hmm. What I've done with FRAC is we've started this thing for the industry. Now, the thing that gets me mad is NSSF is the one group that is supposed to be the liaison between the industry and the industry regulators. Yeah. Well, Friday, the industry regulators came out with a document essentially turning 10 to 40 million people into felons. Yeah. And NSSF hasn't said a word.
Yeah, they haven't really mentioned anything.
Nothing. Zero. Like, I haven't heard anything. Now, I know that they want to maintain a good relationship with ATF, but the reality is to what point? Like, at what point do you say this relationship is broken?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a dysfunctional relationship at best.
Right. At best.
At best.
So what do we do? Do we keep ATF here? Like, the one thing that I would have done if I were in NSSF, I would have been like,
get their asses out of here, man.
You're going to do this to our industry? Get out of here. Instead,
no.
Instead, there's good relationships there, and I think that I'll be the devil's advocate for a second. There's always a good reason to try and keep communication lines open with these people. Okay?
Absolutely.
So I don't want to throw them under the bus completely, but there is a point where you do have to put your foot down, and I haven't seen them do something about that.
So the only ones that I've seen really come out and strongly opinionate about it has been the NRA.
Yeah.
They came out and they really kind of like, but they've been kind of a little bit more aggressive lately. So I guess I'm not surprised.
So the NRA has been getting a bad rap, and I know a lot of the people at the NRA,
Yeah.
and I think some of it is for good reasons. There's a
For
lot
sure.
of things at NRA that I can't stand, and
Absolutely.
I'm not going to sit here and badger them, but they do need to clean house a little bit. But I will say this: NRA, with our company in particular,
Yeah.
SB Tactical, has been there for us,
Yeah.
and we've got a meeting with them in the coming days. I think they really want to be part of this
Yeah.
and kind of make things right. Now, I think they want that. Some of that they probably want for the notoriety of it.
Yeah.
But I know that they want to fix things and make things right, so
course.
that people actually understand that NRA is working for them.
Absolutely.
So I'd be happy to have them help us out. But I got to tell you, we have GOA,
Yeah.
who's helping us out. We have FPC that really wants to be part of this. I mean, there's so many groups. I really would love to see everybody finally, come back together, unite. And we don't have that in our industry.
It's so true.
It's always like,
It's so
everybody's eating
fractioned.
each other, and
Oh,
it's like,
it's so
no,
bad.
I don't want that. Like,
I know.
this is a Second Amendment issue. We all want the same thing.
Yeah.
Let's all get together and fight it together.
Let me ask your opinion on some of these things. So, you see this ruling come out, and there's all this chest beating or this, like, all these ideas that are being floated around. One of them, just do not comply. How does that help us in the inroad, though? Is that a favorable option? Is that something that you think that moves the needle forward for us, or?
The first thing I'll say is that I'm not an attorney.
Yeah.
So
Okay. For sure.
don't
I
take
did
it-
sleep
yeah,
at a Holiday Inn, but hey,
yes,
that only goes so far.
Exactly. I am, but I'm not an attorney. But there's historical. You could look back at history and see that noncompliance, when it comes to prohibition.
Yeah.
What was there? There was mass noncompliance.
Yeah.
Did people pay the penalty for prohibition?
Yeah.
Lots of people
Yeah.
did. Would I want people to go to prison for this? Absolutely not. I think
agree.
this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I do believe that noncompliance is an effective way to show the government, and in this case in particular with this administration, the administration is going to go forward with whatever they want to do, and they're going to
Exactly.
say, sue me.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so what we need to do as an industry, and what I've seen some people do online, is they're starting these like GoFundMe pages to have a pool of money for whoever the government goes after.
Yes.
And they'll get defended by that pool of money. Well, that's the way to do it. As an industry, let's get together. Let's find somebody who's legitimate, can hold this money in escrow.
Yeah.
And if the government wants to go after, Joe
Somebody.
Smith or whoever it is, would that person know that he has his back covered for this issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's take that to let's further that logical conclusion. Let's say that because the government, that's exactly what the government's doing. They're playing a giant game of chicken.
Mm-hmm.
And so waiting to see, somebody's going to push the envelope, and eventually the government is going to have to hold true to their measures. Mm-hmm. And they decide to bring somebody to court. Does that work in their favor, or does that work against them? If it actually goes to court, if somebody is actually brought to court for violating this ruling, and it has to go in front of a jury, how is that going to help the ATF for this case and future cases, or how do you see that going?
So I think the problem here is that you have a split circuit. So you've got the Ninth Circuit for example, for the bump stock issue, they think that it's a machine gun, and the Fifth Circuit is now saying it's not. Now, if we get some kind of case law within the next 3 months, let's say either in the Fifth Circuit or in the Eighth Circuit, where a judge says, no, ATF, you can't do this, and somebody in the Ninth Circuit gets brought to court for it, it's going to be very difficult for any kind of attorney that wants to put, prosecutor, to say we're going to try to put this person in prison. It's not going to look good for them. I don't even think they're going to want to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, so you need to create some kind of case law.
Yeah.
And we're working on that.
Okay, good.
Yeah. We're not the only people working on it.
For sure.
But we're working on that.
So the big scare is that you have 120 days to comply, or face criminal or not criminal charges, but you would theoretically be listed as a criminal
if you get caught with it. So essentially what they're saying is, well, what they did say was that they want the rule to start from day one, but that you have 120 days to comply with what they're saying.
Yeah.
Now, what they wrote in there, in my opinion, is not, they can't do that. It can't start from the first day. I think that's illegal.
Yeah.
But by 120 days, what they're suggesting is that if you have this product, you have 4 or 5 things you can do, which is, destroying the product, registering the product, removing the product, and destroying it. I mean, there's a few things that you can find. I think DOJ put it on their website too.
Nice.
So, but I other than that, after 120 days, unless we beat this thing before, which is what I think is going to happen.
Okay.
Everybody, it'll be the largest gun registration in U.S. history.
So that's ultimately where I wanted to get to. Like all of the things that they have been doing, I don't think this was their initial intention of going for a gun registry. I don't think they had the future vision to see that. Mm-hmm. But I think somewhere along the line they kind of figured out that this might be something that they could do to create a registry. Maybe not the registry, but a registry. Mm-hmm. If this isn't stopped, that's exactly what potentially could happen.
Well,
those that want to change that want to go ahead and comply.
I mean, if people start complying right away, all of those people will start registering and have some kind of document that's registered with the federal government. Yeah. There's a lot of people that I've seen online that want to wait out and see what happens. There's 120 days. A lot can happen in 120 days. Yeah. So I don't know that I would go out, and again, this is not me giving any kind of suggestions. I don't know that I would go out and do it right away.
Yeah.
I do want to see if there's some kind of, a little bit of back and forth that we can have with DOJ and ATF.
For sure. Well, like you said, communication is good. We should try to keep that, but then there should also be a give and take in that time period.
So we say that, but I will tell you, and most people don't know this, we didn't even talk about, we talked about how we got here, but since 2012, I have sat down with the leadership of ATF more than 2 or 3 dozen times. Yeah. Talking about braces. Yeah. And all of these times, in the presence of my attorneys, one of my attorneys is the former head of ATF. He was a presidential appointee under Bush. Wow. Mike Sullivan. Okay, he was one of my attorneys. He was present in these meetings. ATF was always like, oh, no, braces are fine. It's okay. They had some issues with the way things were marketed. So think about that. ATF sent me a document years ago talking about the marketing of my product.
Which you have no control over.
Well, ATF should have no control over any kind of marketing. Yeah. That's not an ATF issue. They didn't like the way we were saying ATF approved. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So we removed ATF approved from our website and everything that we had. And then if you go online, everybody else says ATF approved, ATF. We're the only company that went out and removed that. Did they go after other people to have that removed? No. So we took away ATF approved. We wrote down in a document saying, can we say ATF compliant? And they said, okay. And then after 6 months, they told us, we told you to take off ATF approved. And we said ATF compliant was fine. They told us to remove that. And the thing is, so what is it? And they said, they wrote us a piece of paper saying, well, the ATF doesn't approve anything. So It's just like, I mean, but this is the conversations over the years. It's just been a crescendo. So, I mean, we've gotten to the point now, though, that I think communication has broken down. It would be great to be able to sit down with ATF again. Yeah. The problem is I don't know how much I would believe them, because they've told me so many things over the years in the presence of my attorneys, and they just haven't kept their word. So now we're at a point where we need a good arbiter, and an arbiter is going to be a judge. Yeah. And a judge is going to decide.
Let me ask you this other question. Is there... we're getting to the point, I feel, where we really have to start questioning the legitimacy of NFA items. Like, do we really need to still see them legislated or controlled in this sense? Is there, like, should we as the community start pushing back towards the ATF and start saying, you know what, if you're going to go down this road, screw you, we want to see these NFA items go away.
Yeah, so
we want to see them just registered normally.
The question is, should SBR still be on a National Firearms Act item? And the thing is, the answer is no, they should not. SBR, look, we've had AR-15 pistols since the 1970s. Okay, like these guns, which is essentially like an AR-15, you remove the stock. What's the difference between having a stock and removing the stock? There's no difference. It's not, and then the brace issue is like, if I put a brace on it, it's not a force multiplier. Yeah. In the ATF 293 pages, they're like, the brace was used in 2 mass shootings. And I'm like, well, what did the brace do in the mass shooting? Yeah. You know,
Other than just being there.
If it was there, what about the sights on that gun? Were the sights in the mass shooting too?
Huh.
Did they make the gun?
That's a good argument.
So going back to the question, what about the NFA? I think the NFA, we should have a conversation about it. It was done 1934.
Yeah.
That's a long, long time ago. Like, there's so much stuff that we can talk about. Suppressors overseas are legal. Like, why are we handling suppressors like some crazy thing? And it's because of the movies.
Yes, of
so
course.
you and I, former military, and some of the other people in this room know that a suppressor does not make that sound.
Yeah.
Like, it's loud.
Yeah, it's still good.
It might be OSHA compliant, but it's loud.
Yeah.
You know, so suppressors, I think, should be made legal. Treat them like pistols if you want. Remove them from the NFA. And SBRs and short-barreled shotguns, like, I don't understand. There is no, I mean, people are saying, oh, well, those are things that are only used in war, and it's just they're straw man
for sure.
Arguments. So
I've felt very strongly about really having that open dialogue about, should these NFA items still be listed? Should we consider, should we start pushing harder to actually get them removed? Because if we did get them removed, a lot of our other problems would probably go away as well.
Well, if look, I'm going to have a lot of conversations with a lot of people on the Hill.
Yeah.
And in those conversations, you end up having to explain what a short-barreled rifle is, because most congressmen don't know what it is. Thomas Massey is one of those guys. You probably saw a picture of him. People were all mad because he was there with his M60 machine gun. He has a bunch of transferable machine guns. He's one of the few people on the Hill who I know who really knows the nuanced inside and out of SBRs, pistols, all of that. So, but when you're sitting up there on the Hill and you're trying to talk to these people and you explain to them the difference between a short-barreled rifle and an AR-15 pistol, and you say, there's no difference. There's no force multiplier between one and the other. Yet one is considered a weapon of war and is registered under the NFA, and you need to do all sorts of crazy paperwork to own it. And the other one you can buy as a pistol. Yeah. So people need to understand that there is a big education hurdle to get these people spun up on it. Yeah. But it's important. It's important.
I was going to say, big picture for me would be, because it seems like most of the politicians, I'm going to start off by saying I'll give them the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, proven otherwise is repeat performance. Right. Like when I see them doing the same thing over, I'm not going to give you that benefit of the doubt anymore. But I have a feeling that many of the politicians that, like if we were to remove follow the party line argument, I think the biggest obstacle is ignorance as far as what these items are, and more importantly, what sort of evil is really transpiring with them.
So not to interrupt you,
please do.
But to add to that, and a lot of people might have seen this on YouTube, but you can find it. You can go. You had a congressman. His name was Cicilline, and he was telling. There was a congressman, and I forget her name now, but she wanted to introduce a bill that kept braces legal. Okay, Cicilline in Congress, in front of all these people, said braces are bump stocks. Yeah. He went on and on for hours, and then you had Congressman Democratic after Congressman Democratic saying the brace is a bump stock. The brace has nothing to do with bump stocks. Yeah. It's not even close to a bump stock. Like the two are not similar.
Not even.
Yet they voted on a bill, okay, to say that braces should be banned, or no, the congressman, the Republican congressman was trying to save the braces, and they said no because it was a bump stock. Yeah. Like, how do you vote on something that you don't know anything about? And this is the ignorance that you're talking about.
Exactly. And so, like, again, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt about ignorance, and then it becomes willful compliance of them trying to actually affect whatever acts they are. Mm-hmm. And at that point, the only thing that we can do is, come election time, the old adage of just voting and voting them out of office is about the best thing. Let me ask this question. What can the general public, in particular the 2A community, do to not just support you, but also to ensure we start to see things slow down a little bit, we start to open up some dialogue, and we start to hopefully see some legislation on our end that helps to bolster our constitutional rights?
What I always tell people is, look, you got to do something.
Right.
I don't care what it is. I always say fracaction.org is the where you can go see what I do. Okay. Okay, and that's an industry group. But there are so many groups out there.
Yeah.
You've got FPC, you've got NAGR, you've got GOA, you've got NRA, you've got all these groups that if you want to go to a group, you don't like NRA because of all the nonsense, go to
fair.
FPC. You don't like FPC because of how they're talking about stuff, go to GOA, but go somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to do that, call your congressman.
So that's the other thing I feel we have lost as a constituent is just reaching out and having dialogue with
Yeah.
your representatives.
Yeah.
That's something people disregard, or they just don't value the importance of that. But in absence of any objectionable information, they're going to go in that direction. But if enough people reach out to them, they have to acknowledge a dissension in the points of view of their constituents.
Yeah.
And they have to then do something about that, whether it's formal acknowledgement and, okay, we'll take that under advisement, or they actually do try to do something. I think the more people communicate with their representatives and recognize the importance that they play as a constituent, even if it's a very small part.
Look, the problem is this, and I don't want to be Debbie Downer here. Okay?
No, don't.
But I will say this, and we all see it. Like, look, I sometimes I watch Fox News, sometimes I look at CNN. But the reality of it is that we're a group of folks at this point that it's like we have a 1 week span of media cycle. I mean,
Yeah.
things just disappear. What
Yeah.
happened to somebody blew up the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yeah.
It's an act of war.
Yeah.
Gone. Like what happened to the guys that went to Trump's house? The FBI raided his house. What happened to that? We're talking about it now.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, right now we're talking about, but
Whoopsies.
what about the COVID origins? Like nobody's asking. These things pop up and then they're gone. And my biggest concern, even from a personal level, is that this brace issue, like it's here now, and then people like in a week are going to be like,
There's some other
what
tragedy that we have to deal with.
Yeah, there's going to be something else that pops up.
Yeah.
What can I do about it? I can't do anything about it. That's not true.
That's the biggest problem that I have in communicating with people is they just don't feel as though their contribution will amount to anything. Mm-hmm. And I will tell them it's an absolute certainty that your lack of participation is going to result in something, which is no change.
Right.
So you can choose to continue to go down that path, or you could take the effort of doing something. And I really hope, through all of this that we see more people get involved. One final question. Do you, looking at all of the, you have been at the tip of the spear fighting this battle for a long time, a very long time. Spent thousands, if not more, of your own capital in trying to But in trying to ensure and safeguard this right, if you will. Do you have any regrets?
That's a really good question. Wow. I don't have regrets in I think the way most people would see them.
Okay.
The regrets I have are not having thought about certain things. I should have thought about this before. But you can't do that to yourself.
Yeah.
I should have thought about this. I should have gotten more clarity back in the day. But everything that I've done, has really brought me to now. And I'm not the type of guy that says, "Hey, man, I should have done this." I mean, I'll end on a non-gun note.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
The most important thing you can do.
Yeah.
Number one is the partner you choose.
Fair enough.
Okay. And then the people you surround yourself with. Yeah. She's over there. That's the most important thing. Is other than the partner you choose in life, which is probably 90% of the success or failure that you're going to have is the person you choose. It's the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And so I've made it a mission in my life, and I even when I was in the service, I was never the best Marine. I was in the Army as well. I was never the best soldier. What I was good at doing, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but I think if I'm going to tell other people to do something, it's find the right people, okay? Surround yourself with them. Give them the tools they need, and then, pardon my French, get the fuck out of the way.
I love that.
Get out of the way.
Yeah.
Let them do what they do. Don't micromanage. Take
that.
responsibility for their failures because it's going to be up to you, the leader,
Yeah.
okay? But that's why it's so important to surround yourself with the right people.
I love that. That's fantastic. Alex, thank you first for doing this. I really appreciate it. I know you're super busy and very important stuff that you have ahead of you. I'm definitely going to be monitoring this very closely. And I would love, again, maybe 6 months from now to actually do a full-blown, full-on
great.
podcast show where
I
we
would
can
love that.
actually see what's really what's happened since now, before and after.
Yeah.
Kind of do that. And then we can get really into the weeds about who you are and all these other things. But thank you for taking the time to come in and sharing this information with me. It's always a pleasure. I love what you're doing, and anything I can do to support it, absolutely will be there for you.
Thanks, brother.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
All right, folks, I'm Jeff Gonzalez. Thanks for tuning in to this SHOT Show special of the Bulletproof Podcast. Until then, take care or be dangerous.